Picture a lion steak on your dinner plate. Your stomach turns before your mind even decides why. You have never been taught to fear this meat. No one warned you about it as a child. And yet something ancient in you says no. That reaction is not squeamishness. It is a survival program millions of years old, and it is still running inside you right now. Humans eat almost everything. Insects, organs, fermented milk, rotten fish buried in sand for months. So why does something in you flinch at the thought of eating a wolf, a tiger, or an eagle? The answer is not about taste. It is about energy, poison, and disease, written into your biology long before you were born. Start with energy. Think of the natural world as a pyramid. At the bottom sit plants, soaking up sunlight and turning it into sugar. Herbivores eat the plants, absorbing a fraction of that energy. Predators eat the herbivores, absorbing an even smaller fraction of what the herbivore absorbed. Each step up the pyramid loses roughly 90% of the usable energy. It escapes as heat, movement, digestion. By the time you reach an apex predator, its flesh holds barely a whisper of the energy that started as sunlight. For early humans, calories were survival. Every hunt was a gamble against exhaustion and starvation. So imagine tracking a lion for 3 days, risking your life to kill an animal that could kill you first, only to butcher it and find a fraction of the nutrition sitting in a single antelope. The math never worked. Herbivores were the better bet, safer to hunt, more energy per kilogram, and far more of them roamed the land. Wasting weeks chasing a top predator for a nutritional dead end simply was not a habit that survived natural selection. But energy is only half the story. The other half is far more dangerous. It is what predators carry inside them. Here is a strange fact. Polar explorers in the early 20th century sometimes ate the liver of the animals they hunted. When they ate the liver of a polar bear, some of them became violently ill. Their skin peeled, their vision blurred. Some nearly died. The cause was not infection. It was vitamin A. Polar bears sit at the very top of the Arctic food chain. They eat seals, which eat fish, which eat plankton rich in vitamin A. Each animal that eats another concentrates that vitamin further, a process scientists call biomagnification. By the time it reaches the liver of a polar bear, the concentration is so extreme that a single meal can push a human into toxic overdose. Inuit communities have known this for centuries, passed down as a rule as firm as any law. Never eat the liver of a polar bear, a seal, or a husky. This was not superstition. It was applied biology, discovered the hard way, generation after generation. And vitamin A is not the only danger stacking up the food chain. Heavy metals do the same thing. Mercury, released by industry and volcanic activity, settles in oceans and soil. Small organisms absorb trace amounts. Fish eat those organisms and absorb more. Bigger fish eat smaller fish, concentrating the mercury further. By the time you reach a shark, a swordfish, or an eagle at the very top, the toxin has multiplied dozens of times over. This is why doctors today still warn pregnant women to limit swordfish and shark meat specifically, while smaller fish lower on the chain remain safe. Your body is not being fussy when it hesitates over predator meat. It is running a calculation your ancestors paid for in illness and death. Now think about disease. Predators do not just carry toxins. They carry parasites, and lots of them. Herbivores can carry parasites too, but a predator's body is a magnifier. Every parasite living inside the prey animal has a chance to survive being eaten and take up residence inside the predator instead. Wolves, big cats, and bears are frequently loaded with tapeworms, roundworms, and the microscopic larvae that cause trichinosis, a disease that can leave a human bedridden with fever and crushing muscle pain for weeks. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer diets, including work compiled by researcher Frank Marlowe on the Hadza people of Tanzania, found that predator meat rarely appears on the menu at all. Herbivore meat dominates almost every meal, hunted specifically because it carries a lower parasite load and does not require the same intense preparation to make it safe. There is also the question of the meat itself. Predator muscle is built for chasing, wrestling, and killing. It is lean, tough, and often described by those who have tasted it as sharp, musky, or simply unpleasant. Herbivore meat, fed on a lifetime of grass and fat storage, is naturally more tender and calorie-dense. Evolution rewarded ancestors who developed a preference for the animal that was easier to catch, safer to eat, and simply tasted better. Preference became instinct. Instinct became culture. And culture, passed down through thousands of generations, became the deep, wordless discomfort you feel today at the thought of eating a lion. But here is where the story gets stranger. This is not only a human rule. It shows up across the animal kingdom too. Very few predators eat other predators as a primary food source. Lions rarely hunt hyenas for food, even when conflict between them turns deadly. Sharks do not typically hunt other large sharks as prey. When predator does kill predator, it is almost always about territory or eliminating a rival, not about dinner. Nature itself seems to understand the math of energy loss and toxin buildup, even without a single textbook to explain it. So when you feel that flicker of revulsion at the idea of eating a wolf, a tiger, or an eagle, you are not simply squeamish. You are running an ancient calculation inherited from ancestors who learned through illness, starvation, and hard experience which animals were worth the risk. Every flinch, every wrinkled nose, is a message passed down across hundreds of thousands of years. This food costs more than it gives. And maybe that is the real lesson hiding inside this question. You like to think of your choices as personal, deliberate, entirely your own. But so much of what feels like instinct, what feels like simple taste or preference, is actually a memory. A memory written not in words, but in flesh, blood, and the quiet wisdom of everyone who came before you, standing at the edge of a hunt, deciding what was worth the risk. Tonight, when you sit down to a plate of chicken or beef without a second thought, remember that this ease was never guaranteed. It was earned, one careful choice at a time, by people who paid close attention to what their bodies were trying to tell them.